I'm Adam Wingard, and I directed the segment Phase 1 Clinical Trials. Due to the Chronic Guy.
I'm Simon Barrett, and I wrote Phase 1 Clinical Trials, and I also directed the wraparound segment, Take 49.
I'm Jason Eisener, and I directed the Slumber Party Alien Abduction, and this is my kitty Smitty.
You're not allowed to touch any animals. I don't care if it's fake or not. Put that thing down.
She's mad. You're fucked already, Jason. She's mad at you for killing that poor dog.
I'm Ed Sanchez, and I co-directed Ride in the Park.
Gregg, Hale, I co-directed Ride in the Park with Ed Sanchez.
Can you guys tell me a little bit about what happens when you're called upon to have some sort of hand on a VHS segment? Is there any talk between you guys? I shot killing someone in my movie this way, so there's no overlap?
It's a lot like being served with a lawsuit, actually. You just wake up one morning and you open your door, and Adam and I are there with papers, and you're just like, fuck. And then you realize that that's the next month of your life.
Yeah.
In Jakarta, for example, literally, if you don't then make a VHS segment, your family goes to prison. Yeah. So Jareth and Timo had it worse. These guys could have probably gotten out of it, but they figured it wasn't worth fighting.
And do you guys share ideas before you do it?
Yeah, everybody knew what everybody was doing based on their script, and we kind of kept it at that. It was we all had an idea of, kind of tonally what everybody was going for, and then everybody went their own separate ways and shot it with their own crews and everything. And then after the fact, we showed each other our stuff and, did a notes process where it was like, hey, here, check it out. And then everybody's like, hey, what about this? And everybody's just like, shut the fuck up. I'm not changing a goddamn thing.
Hey.
And Gareth and then we're like,
we're
going to fucking make ours 10 minutes longer. And we're like, fine.
Great, that's just great. Well, we're going to edit it together. People are going to see it.
Are there any technical limitations? If someone shoots on one format, do you all have to do the same, or are you guys all shooting on different cameras?
No, in fact, we try to get as much variety as possible. Actually, the only thing that Adam and I ever expressed any concern on in terms of people shooting was we were a little concerned that everyone was using GoPros at various points. And obviously...
It was more so because you guys knew the nightmare of the GoPro.
Well, I shot... Well, Jason filmed... We all filmed basically simultaneously, except Jason, who filmed a couple months later, and I was like, dude, don't do it.
Yeah.
Don't do it, dude. Now they have the new GoPro, which is supposedly awesome.
Yeah, I know, man.
We didn't have that stupid thing yet. It hadn't come out
Came
yet.
out a month after.
Yeah, we all had old GoPros, and those things are very difficult.
Yeah, you can't do playback on them or anything. You have to put it in the computer anytime you want to watch something back. It just really sucks.
Yeah.
And I only used it for the one section whenever I go underwater.
Yeah,
and it was to me it just was a nightmare just from using that. So I can't even picture what you guys.
Yeah.
So that's especially because you guys.
At least we were in the day.
Yeah.
The nighttime, you're like, what the fuck do I do?
Oh my god, yeah, it was scary.
What's the option other than GoPros though? Because I tried to handheld record this Walking Dead escape thing I did a while ago, and I'm sorry, but doing a found footage film is just not possible. You're shaking all over the place.
The advantage of using a GoPro and the reason why they end up coming up in all these segments is because a GoPro is basically the smallest camera that you can get a decent image out of and still attach it to yourself so that you're not having to run around with the camera and so forth. So I think that's why that kept coming up.
And I was just kind of an idiot. I thought people were starting to attach GoPro cameras on their pets and stuff, and I saw it on the internet, and I thought, okay, I should just do the same thing because I'm making a found footage movie, and it should feel like it's it's real. And I would, if I could go back, I would have just used a Canon probably.
Yeah. Well, that really, though. Going back to your question, it is we wanted each segment to have a different look to it. So so it's mostly if people want to shoot on some weird format, we encourage that.
And out of curiosity, with the dog cam, it's not attached to a dog. Is there hair glued to the front of the camera?
So
sometimes it's attached to a dog.
Oh yeah, it's for
dog,
all the way. Yeah, a lot of it is, but when the chase stuff is happening to the aliens, it's actually an elf doll.
It's an elf puppet.
Yeah,
Which is amazing. It's Jason's arm.
You really want out that your parents have a dog that looks exactly
That's why
like
I casted it. I was like,
insane.
okay, because when my parents got that dog, I was like, oh, he looks just like my old elf doll. And then coming up with this idea, I was like, oh, I could just get the elf doll, I could puppeteer it, and it was also a nightmare too, because it meant that, and with the GoPro camera, I couldn't watch a monitor or anything. So it literally meant I had to crawl around on all fours, running around with a puppet, and also try to direct kids, but also being a dog, and then also making sure I got the shot right, and not only have like a screen like
Yeah,
that.
there's nothing worse, I think, in terms of making a movie, even beyond just a found footage movie, but not having the absolute confidence that you got what you wanted to get, you know, and like that, and shooting on like formats like that, you come away kind of being like, I think we got it, you know, and that's like a horrible feeling, you know, to leave your set
Oh
and
god,
be
I was like terrified.
it's so stressful.
Oh yeah, and I was just like also too because it is like a lot of it was this puppet dog.
Mm-hmm.
I'm thinking like I'm just like so worried that it's not gonna work, that people just won't believe that it's a real dog.
Right.
And so I thought if I could come out of this and people just believe that they're watching a movie from a dog's perspective and they it works, then like that's my triumph there.
Oh yeah, no, I had no playback on any of my stuff because the way the room was covered with all the different cameras simultaneously. I was in another room with like a monitor, but the monitor never worked because it was like a remote thing. It just kept glitching out, and I would literally just like come in and just like kind of check a couple of the cameras and just like, okay, I guess we're moving on.
Is there any other movie magic stuff like that, like things to achieve gore and killing people that are wildly different on screen than what you really had to do to achieve it on set?
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
I mean, like they got a guy run over by a car in there. Is have you seen the film?
Yes, I saw it last night.
Yeah, it's if you look, for example, at the wraparound, which doesn't look like anyone's doing much, you have to remember that one of my actors is half the time wearing a giant rig on his chest to simulate the button camera. So every single thing I film, whenever I got a take that I liked, I then had to film it differently with like my cinematographer and him standing right over her shoulder and my actress looking at my cinematographer's forehead to simulate the eye line while she's wearing a giant camera rig and he's being her arms reaching over her shoulders and I'm standing right behind them trying to like shape this like human centipede to like, frame the shots, crying hysterically, ruining the sound of almost every take. So I mean, yeah, it's and I'm sure everyone has like an equivocal tale to like, because I mean these movies are just they present technical challenges that require
unique solutions.
Yeah, a level of ingenuity that I would describe as ridiculous.
Is it cool to ask how much you guys spend on these, roughly?
Yeah, I mean, I don't mind talking about that.
Yeah, please do.
Yeah, I mean, the budgets for all these, including post, are about $50,000 each. So I mean, that gives you money to play with. But again, like not money to like throw at problems, and and that's kind of a hard out too. It's like you can't really go over in terms of your budget or schedule. So if you run into problems.
And if you live in Indonesia,
I think the money
goes a little bit further.
That's like how much more your money goes.
Yeah, I don't know what the equivalent of
When
that.
I first saw it, I couldn't believe it.
Yeah.
I mean, they gave him more money.
Garrett and Timo did not give him money.
That's what I'm saying.
I do think they went over budget and maybe spent some of their visual effects out of their own pockets, just because Garrett made the raid and he has money. But no, it was just, that's the difference. Like Adam and I filmed in Los Angeles, which is like the worst place, and then you go to Jakarta and see what like that amount of money gets you. And they have like hundreds of extras, and their segment is really incredible. They correct themselves.
How many days did they shoot?
12 days.
Yes.
I shot 4 days.
Yeah,
How many times do they have to reset that? Like, I mean, do they only get one shot to kind of do the massacre?
The funny thing is I've talked to them a lot, but we mostly talk to them on like Twitter DMs, so like there's communication, like the level of communication is like a little confusing sometimes. I have no idea honestly how they shot some of the stuff that they shot. I mean, they were doing a lot of the times the same thing that I was doing, which is they have actors wearing camera rigs and they're shooting it both ways a lot of times. So I mean, they definitely had to do a lot of different takes, but then there's also things.
There's a ton of VFX in theirs too.
Their digital blood guy is the absolute best I've ever seen. You would not in a million years know how much digital blood there is in that film, except that we've seen all the different cuts of it and know that they're not doing stuff practically sometimes. But it's the best I've ever seen. It's seamless.
And now, how about just these ideas to begin with? Because it's hard enough to come up with an idea for a feature, but you guys are doing things like VHS and ABCs of Death, where you've got to keep churning out these very different ideas. So, what inspired these, dare I ask?
I mean, I think the overall thing is just that we try to do things that we haven't seen before. ABCs was very different than VHS, obviously, because with that, we were trying to second guess 25 other filmmakers a little bit, and all we had to look at was Lee Hardcastle's Tease for Toilet, what was the film going to be? But with the VHS movies, because found footage horror has become such a thing, I think, you know, like what like Gregg and Eduardo did, like kind of combining like two very kind of familiar genres, but doing something that like absolutely I've never seen anything like it.
It seems
you know?
like the starting point on a lot of these seems to be picking a subgenre of something and being like, how do we do this in a new way? And I think found footage in general, that's like kind of the strongest point of it, is that you can take stories that you've seen before and suddenly spin them in a new context, you know. And for me specifically for this film, you know, having come off the first VHS, you know, like the route that I took on that one is I wanted to do something that was really dirty, you know, because I was just so sick of like seeing found footage stuff that just, you know, just didn't feel like authentic to me. And so I wanted to really just make something really nasty and looking, but when it came around to do this next one, I felt like, you know, I was just like so done with that, and I wanted to try to do something that was just, you know, like basically come up with something that we could basically create our own technology for, and be completely inauthentic and kind of use that to our advantage.
I love that idea. Like, I love the idea of doing a found footage movie where you could step that up even more, like where you can just like go even, you know, to some more futuristic. Or,
right.
Yeah, like I love that idea.
Actually,
and then like this
has
movie,
done a futuristic found footage movie.
Yeah, I know. I
It's
think it's like a really cool idea.
my super cam.
we made the joke that yours is slightly futuristic.
Yeah, I took it like that.
Yeah.
Like, what I love about it is like this movie almost reminds me of like it's like the heavy metal. You know that animated movie Heavy Metal, like the animated film. It's like it's like a found
The
footage heavy metal.
2001 Heavy Metal 2000.
Yeah.
You remember that?
Yeah. Oh, barely. Yeah. But like that, all the shorts have like these like their own like crazy idea, like kind of like that old Heavy Metal cartoon, and.
Yeah, you're right. I never thought about that.
Yeah, and I love that, you know, his is like has like this almost futuristic like.
Was it you that started? I don't know. Sorry.
Like I just love that. To me, his reminded me of like I think like a kid who would watch like heavy metal. Like I remember when I watched as a kid, and you'd see, you know, cartoon boobs for the first time. And, like,
Yeah.
and that's what I would like watching that reminded me of being like a kid, like watching heavy metal, where it's like, I don't know, this crazy short, and then you know.
It gets kind of sleazy.
Yeah.
But I think your guys is like when anytime you start off with a doctor kind of leaning, you're immediately like, okay, this is like $6 Million Man, or like and immediately sets you, and also the sound.
Yeah.
It's like you're on a spaceship in that office. And so it completely sets you up.
Yeah, I think we would have liked to have gone even further with the sci-fi stuff.
Yeah, I think that's so. I'd love to do the crazy sci-fi. stuff.
Yeah, totally.
And now, how about just the short format period? Because like, what's important to you when you make a short? Because a feature, like all features, really should have beginning, middles, and ends. But like after watching ABCs of Death too, like there's, I mean, you can do experimental. You could, you know, just have one punchline at the end, and you could still have a beginning, middle, and end.
Well, I think we talked a lot about like found footage in particular. I think you know, Adam pointed out a while ago that like the problem with a lot of found footage movies is they have to spend like their entire first act kind of like slowly explaining like why they're doing what they're doing with the cameras, because it has to sustain a feature. When you're doing just a short, like you don't have to like be like, wait, why are they still filming this? Because it's a much shorter time frame. You know, like and you know, for example, like, you know, if Jason's was 90 minutes long, you'd be like, really? Like the battery hasn't run out, the camera hasn't fallen off that dog, but in like what is it, 13 minutes?
Yeah.
Yeah. Like, you know, that you don't think about that. So it just frees you up a lot kind of creatively to do new things in the format. But that's unique to the found footage style. I mean, I think, you know, shorts, but it's kind of true for every short. You know, it just frees you up to do something that doesn't follow that 3-act structure.
Well, you can get right into it.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's what it forces you to get right in there. And like problems I've had with like recent found footage movies is, you know, the way I would treat like any normal narrative film is every shot counts to like push the story forward. Where like a lot of like found footage features will just like, you know, random shots of nothing that don't do anything or interesting to push the story forward, almost bore you to death by the time like a curtain like flutters or something like that. Then it's like, oh, something happened.
What about just the reason to do found footage? Like one thing that always irks me is when like it's like they just show that this is a found footage movie. They don't give a character a reason to hold a camera. Do you feel that pressure too?
Yeah, that's our number one.
Yeah,
you know,
that was like
issue
one of the
with it
number one
is-
rules of them. I know when I came on was like you have to believe that the camera would be on, and you know why? Because you always hate like when a character's like stopping to film something while their family's in
Yeah,
peril. or
and
something.
that's
Like,
like
drop
going
the
back to
camera.
the whole GoPro thing is that it's a brilliant thing because you can just attach it. And that was also whenever we were coming up with phase 1. It was like, hey, what's the easiest way to get a camera planted on somebody? And it's like, well, put it in his eyeball and it's just there. You know what I mean? And then the whole thing takes care of itself, really. And plus, it's like it's technology that at that point didn't exist. It does now. I guess somebody's actually done that in the last week or two. But but it afforded us to be able to make sense out of somebody continually running around and like still filming and stuff.
Mm-hmm. Another thing I think about the short is I think in general we're so used to seeing. If you think about it, you see found footage constantly. I mean, YouTube is mostly found footage. Mm-hmm. So I think you over and over and over again, you kind of get programmed subconsciously to expect that found footage is short. You see it in short you see it in short little bursts. And I think that's what kind of works with these films is like, like Simon was saying, you don't have time to think about, well, why are they still filming? You kind of accept it, and by the time you're thinking about it, we're done.
Well, especially with the GoPro, which is actually quite difficult to turn off and on.
Yeah.
You totally buy it. They're still filming. They probably tried to turn it off at one point, couldn't figure out the menu interface, and just kept filming while their family's in peril. Yeah. I mean, it's funny because a lot of found footage. We've talked a lot about the moment in found footage movies where people scream at the camera, stop filming. That's how a lot of writers deal with that conundrum. Is they just call attention to it and move on. And I mean, but everyone is so sick of those beats. I mean, honestly, everyone's still riffing on what Eduardo and Gregg did, like 14 years ago, Blair Witch. And kind of like, even with Your Next, we kind of were like, we want to do a home invasion movie because people are still kind of riffing on what Michael Haneke was satirizing with Funny Games back in 1997. It was kind of like with VHS, we really wanted to be like, okay, like how do you take like the Blair Witch paradigm, which has like reached kind of like now this like cultural zeitgeist thing with the paranormal movies, and do like just something completely different tonally.
Yeah, because even paranormal is pretty much still doing.
It's still doing the Blair Witch thing. It's a slow burn.
Yeah, exactly.
Mm-hmm. It's a slow burn. It's a lot of like off screens. Like it's a lot of atmospheric.
They just brilliantly came up with the gimmick of every night there's going to be something that's possibly going to happen. Or whatever. And that was the stake was raised there. And then things like Cloverfield, I feel like is more kind of what these VHS movies are kind of like riffing on, where it's just like balls to the wall, like just like nonstop, like crazy stuff going on. They're kind of fantastical, like things that because even with paranormal, it's kind of presented in a way, and the Blair Witch, where it's like this could really happen, this could be like a real, haunting event or whatever. But when Cloverfield, I felt like really kind of changed the scene to me, at least, because it was like, this is found footage, but you know what? There's a huge monster in it, and obviously, we're not trying to say that this really happened, and I think that's kind of like, that kind of started like sort of a new wave of, how to approach this whole thing. And that's what we've done with these movies. It's like, I mean, so far, like there's been, zombies and aliens and ghosts and, and all kinds of shit. And
demon.
Yeah.
From hell.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So it's like, we're not trying to say like this is actually found footage anymore, which I think is like really cool, and it allows everybody to just use their imagination.
Yeah, Gregg and Eduardo's piece has score at a certain point, like non-diegetic music just starts playing, and we talked a lot about that, and we're like, no, like we've earned that, like especially they're short by the time you reach that point.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I mean, everyone gets it now. Everyone knows what found footage is, and it's time to try to do something different with that.
And now, how about the anthology format too? I mean, it's not like anthology is a new thing, but it's kind of becoming a craze now. So, are you guys learning anything, like what works and what doesn't?
Well,
keep it short. I mean, that's really it. I mean, because like the other two anthologies we did, ABC's and the first VHS, were both like 2-hour movies basically.
And you feel it.
Yeah, and that's a lot of starting and stopping, and going into this one, like we definitely wanted to make sure that we were coming in at about 90 minutes, and I mean, I feel like that's generally like a good rule for pretty much any horror film. It's like don't go over an hour 40, really,
unless you really have reason to,
and really have earned it. You know what I mean? But
like with a good narrative.
But especially a film like this, where it's basically like it's a haunted house ride. You're going through different sections, and we're throwing all kinds of fun things at you. It's like you don't want to overstay your welcome. Yeah. And
when we first started talking to Brad about the VHS concept, like back before the first film started shooting or anything, it was originally going to be like some kind of TV series, and we really pushed to do it as an old school anthology with like a wraparound, mostly because we just knew that it would get made, and we have no idea how to do television. But we knew that, like, with the budget that they had, a couple $100,000, that we could make a feature film. But it also just came from, honestly, I just loved those movies so much when I was a kid. Those old Amicus, like Tales from the Crypt films, Vault of Horror. Like, I just... And there just hadn't, and just nobody had done that. Yeah. Creep Show, obviously.
Cat's Eye.
Well, they hadn't worked. They hadn't really worked.
Well, there hadn't been, the last financially successful anthology horror film was Tales from the Hood. Prior to VHS.
I love Tales from the Hood.
Tales from the Hood's great.
It's
Don't get me
awesome.
wrong, Tales from the Hood is fantastic, but that was like 1995. So we talked a lot about Tales from the Hood. But yeah, I mean, it was kind of just like, this is a cool way to do something that's not at all new. Obviously, it's as old as like film itself, with like Dead of Night and stuff. But it will feel very like different from kind of what's going on. And now there's kind of now there's been a resurgence of kind of anthology stuff, and it's cool. I enjoy those films.